Call of the meeting this evening. Lorain City Central Committee members, pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 731.43 and 3513.31, a meeting to name a replacement to the office of council at large and a replacement to the ballot for the office of mayor is called for Tuesday, June 25th, 2019, at 6 p.m. The meeting will be held at Rosewood in Lorain, Ohio. We'll now move on to the item of the agenda for the replacement of office in council at large. And I will have our County Central Committee Chair come forward to take nominations. Tom Smith.
Good to see you all again. We have to stop meeting like this. We're going to have the same process we had the last meeting. We're going to look for a nomination for the council position. A second. Once that person is seconded, we'll ask them to come up. And if there's more than one, they'll all come up here and sit. They'll be given 5 minutes to speak, and then we'll vote. Okay? Are there nominations for the replacement?
Yes, I'd be proud to nominate Tony DeMacchio to fill the council at large seat.
Second?
Second. I'll second that.
Mr. Kazura? Okay. Any other nominations for that slot? Hearing none, I think it's appropriate for a motion to cast a unanimous ballot for Tony. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Tony, congratulations.
Good evening. First, let me thank all of you for all of your service and what you do. I know the last month and a half has been very challenging and interesting in the same, and your jobs aren't very easy, especially in times like this. And I, for one, appreciate the opportunity and the consideration for filling the vacant council at large seat. And I can't thank you enough for having that confidence in me to step in there and take over for now Mayor Kazura. And again, I'm extremely excited to take on this new venture. I've been a part of the community and working for the community on the Board of Education, and that's going to be bittersweet leaving that arena, but hopefully we'll continue that fight over there. But again, I'm extremely excited to work with Mayor Kazura, City Council, our city workers, and most importantly, represent the taxpayers and voters of the city of Lorain. So thank you so very much for this opportunity.
Before we go to the next agenda item, Chairman Adams asked me to address some issues that have come up recently, actually since our last meeting. I thought we had gone through what the law is in Ohio and how we got to the point where several candidates who were on the ballot in the primary election were not eligible to be appointed to fill the vacant ballot position for the office of mayor, which we have next on the agenda. Since then, many of you apparently have had delivered to your homes a memorandum of law, a 21-page memorandum of law from an Avon attorney by the name of Gerald Phillips. In his memorandum of law, Mr. Phillips expresses his opinion that section 3513.04 of the revised code, that's the code section that made all those candidates ineligible because they were on the ballot in the primary to fill the ballot position for mayor in this coming general election. It was his opinion, it is his opinion apparently, that that code section is unconstitutional and therefore it is not valid. A few things you should know, assuming that you took the time to read it as I did, and perhaps if you did read it, you may be as confused as I was. But the important things that I would like to bring to your attention are as follows. First of all, the Lorain County Democrat Party did not not seek the opinion of Attorney Phillips. And that is exactly what it is. It's an opinion of one lawyer from Avon who has the viewpoint that this statute is somehow unconstitutional. Now, by his own admission, his clients are not the Democrat Party. His clients, according to a newspaper published report this morning, are Dennis Flores, a second ward councilman who's not a candidate, to my knowledge, for this position of mayor, and a committee known as the Ohio Citizens for Honesty, Integrity, and Openness in Government. If this committee is so open and honest, then I'd like to know why we don't know who's funding it or who are the members of the committee. I do know this, that it is a domestic limited liability company set up by Mr. Phillips, because that's what the Secretary of State's office shows when you Google it, and that he is their registered agent, and that their address is in Avon, not Lorain. This is not a Citizens Committee of Lorain. This is a Citizens Committee apparently headquartered in Avon. It's a Citizens Committee that I know opposed the sales tax that our county commissioners put on some time ago. And besides that, I don't know anything else about it. Second thing that I think we all ought to be aware of is that this opinion directly conflicts with the opinion of our own Lorain County prosecutor, Dennis Will, and it directly conflicts with our Secretary of State's general counsel. That's the lawyer who represents the Secretary of State's office. In addition, it's my understanding that Mr. Adams, Chairman Adams, reached out to the county prosecutor, asked if he had had an opportunity to read the memorandum of law, and if so, did it change his opinion about the law and its validity? And the response was, yes, I've read it, and no, it doesn't change my opinion. So we have the opinion of an Avon attorney who represents a citizens committee that we have no idea who's behind. And we have the opinions of our county prosecutor who's elected to represent us, a Democrat, and our Secretary of State, his general counsel, and he, by the way, is a Republican. So that, I think, is an important point for us to be aware of. Third, Mr. Phillips doesn't, if you read his memorandum of law carefully, he doesn't really disagree with our interpretation of the law, namely that all the candidates who are on the ballot in the primary are now ineligible to fill any vacant ballot position for any other office in the general election. Instead, what he says is that the statute is unconstitutional, and that makes it invalid. That's a pretty big mountain to climb. So we're not talking about interpreting the statute, we're talking about having it declared unconstitutional. Now, this law has been in effect for 6 years. You might think that someone in those 6 years would have challenged the law and its constitutionality, and to my knowledge, nobody has. Number 4, and this is really the important point that we have here. If you read that opinion, in order to accomplish what he suggested we do, the following things would have to happen. First of all, those candidates who were on the ballot and who had expressed an interest in this position, so Mitch and Mary and Joelle and Tony, who were just appointed to fill out the council of RC, all those folks would have to withdraw their candidacy for the offices that they've now been nominated for. In other words, they would have to tell our party and the voters, I don't want to run for council at large, or Karen's case, the city auditor. I'm withdrawing my candidacy. So now, any of those folks who did that we would no longer have candidates for those offices. Now you might say, well, and he says, well, big deal, because you can just have another meeting and you can reappoint anyone who doesn't make the appointment. Well, thank you very much, but I don't know about you, but these meetings are time consuming, and more importantly, we would have to get it done by July 15th. Now you say, well, why July 15th? Because there's another statute that says that once we have a vacancy in a ballot position, as we do now for the position of mayor, that vacancy came about on May 31st, when Chase Rittenhour not only resigned as mayor, but he also withdrew his candidacy as our nominee for mayor. So the clock started running on June 1st. We have 45 days to get the appointment made to fill that vacancy. 25 of those days have run as of today, leaving about 20 more days to get it done. So what he is suggesting is that we would get a lawsuit filed. First of all you guys who want to do it have to withdraw your candidacies. Then we have to get a lawsuit filed. We have to get a trial on that lawsuit. And then, after that trial, the judge would have to rule that the statute's unconstitutional, going against the opinions of the Secretary of State and our county prosecutor. And then after ruling it unconstitutional, any appeals to the Court of Appeals would have to be heard. And all necessary parties would have to be heard on that. And we got to get that all done by July 15th. Taking out the 4th of July weekend, I'd say that under any set of circumstances, that is a task that is, I usually don't say things are impossible, but I'd say that's impossible. Now, what's the penalty if we don't get it all done by July 15th? We don't have a candidate for mayor. What's the penalty if a judge doesn't agree with Mr. Phillips' opinion? We don't have a candidate for mayor. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was elected by the precinct, by the Democrats in my precinct, they expected me to do what's in the best interest of our party. And I'm pretty sure I know all of you pretty well, and I would say that all of you have that same feeling. And the thought that in the city of Lorain, a city where we hold a registration advantage of 10 to 1, 10 Democrats for every 1 Republican, that we wouldn't even have a candidate for the highest office in the city is to me so absurd that it honestly doesn't deserve much serious discussion. It just doesn't make sense. Yeah, it's great to talk about, and by the way, in Mr. Phillips' opinion, he does say that there's that risk. Well, that's great. Kind of reminds me of that old saying when they used to talk about General Patton as being blood and guts Patton. And some soldier who'd been fighting alongside him said, yeah, our blood and our guts. This is serious business. This isn't a version of Game of Thrones. But we're going to do these kinds of machinations, challenge laws that have been in place for, in this case, 6 years, and then hope that we can get it all done and still maintain our credibility. It simply doesn't make sense. And that is why, and by the way, Tom and I are members of the Board of Elections. We're appointed by the Secretary of State with your recommendation. And when the Secretary of State appoints us, he then expects us to take an oath. Tom and I both took that oath. And that oath is, as you all know, because all of you take oaths when you become precinct committee people, is that we're going to uphold the laws of the state of Ohio. And this is one of those laws. So even if, and by the way, we've expressed before our disagreement with this law. I don't agree with it. Paul doesn't agree with it. Tom doesn't agree with it. We think it's a bad law. But we don't get to pick and choose the laws we get to follow. If a policeman pulls me over for speeding, I can't say, well, officer, I don't really think the speed limit on Overland Avenue should be 35 miles an hour. I think it should be more like 50. Well, too bad. You're getting a ticket anyhow. And that's kind of the way it works. We have to follow the law. So if this issue were to come before us, we literally would have to vote against our own party. It's just an untenable position. And I hope that you all understand why we can't even consider doing this. We have to do our jobs. And there's one last thing that I would like to mention to you. I hear a lot of comment that, well, the voters of Lorain are being left out of this whole process. That is absolutely, positively not true. First of all, all of you were elected by the voters in your precinct. You're not appointed. Secondly, somehow this has been missed, we're appointing someone to a ballot position for mayor. Last time I checked, there's a Republican candidate for the office of mayor in the city of Lorain. So, all of them, not just the Democrats and not just the Republicans in Lorain, but every single voter, registered voter in the city of Lorain, in November at the general election will get a chance to vote. So this idea that the voters won't have a say in this thing is simply wrong. Now, we didn't make the rules about how we nominate candidates. We did in a primary. Unfortunately, our candidate nominated by the Democrats who showed up in May withdrew. The law says when that happens to a political party, they have a right. They have 45 days to fill that vacancy. 25 have ticked away. And we're running out of time to get it done, which is why Paul and I and Tom set the meeting the way we did and why we need to move forward without further delay. And I don't know about you, but I'm not willing to risk us having a candidate for mayor, particularly when we have several good individuals who've expressed an interest to take a chance that we would have zero candidate for mayor. And with that, Mr. Chairman, did you want me to continue on with the nominations, or Tom, are you going to take it back over? Tom? Yeah, okay. So that everybody understands, we're not entertaining any idea that we're not going to go forward with this appointment. We're going forward with the appointment. That's what the agenda item calls for, and that's it.
Tom, I rise for a point of information.
Pardon?
I rise for a point of information.
Sure.
Just so we're clear, I know a lot of people in my neighborhood that, who's the chair?
Please stand up.
Can you hear him?
Who am I speaking, who is chairing the meeting?
Pardon?
I mean.
Well, you said point of information. I didn't know who you were directing it
Here's where we're
to.
at. Just for clarity, when an individual shows an interest in an office to run, and they're successful in obtaining what they need, are they notified by the Board of Elections that they're successful and they've met all the criteria?
Paul, I think that's a question for the board.
Thank you.
Can you
So-
notify of what?
Well, if an individual shows an interest in running for an elected office, are they notified by the Board of Elections that they've met the criteria and they will be on the ballot?
Speak up, we can't hear you.
Yeah, whatever.
There's a certification process, but that process is different from what we are talking about here this evening. What we're talking about here this evening is a replacement in a nomination determined by the political party. If you have an individual who is looking to run for, let's say, township trustee, that is a different legal process. There is a legal process that occurs to do that with the Board of Elections. When it comes to the party making nominations and selecting those individuals, that is not a process that goes to the Board of Elections. What happens after this point is we will sign a form that will be filed with the Board of Elections at that point.
So the Democratic Party signs the form?
Correct. There is a form after all of these meetings. You'll usually see me hanging around. After the candidate gets done talking to everybody, I have to wave them down and say, hey, you gotta fill out this piece of paper before you get out of here. And that piece of paper is what officially gets filed with the Board of Elections. Before that, there's nothing that officially occurs in terms of the candidate themselves. What occurs with the Board of Elections is the filing of that form.
So, in essence, so who notified the prior 5 candidates that were declared?
That was through the party. The political party had that conversation with the candidates.
And so that's not required to get a notification from the Lorain County Board of Elections?
No, it is not. Okay, did you have any other points of order that you would like to make?
No, I just.
Okay, the other item that I will point out, just for clarification, The Constitution and bylaws of our city party state that during these kind of meetings, the chair or their designee can participate in running various parts of the meeting. And Tom Smith has been our county central committee chair for many years, was the county chair. And just out of respect for him and his position, I did ask him to handle the nominations just like he did last time. Okay? Sure.
I just wanted some clarification. 'Cause
Sure.
There seemed to be a lot of confusion amongst the people in Lorain that, did the Board of Elections declare those individuals ineligible, or did the Lorain City Democratic Party declare them ineligible?
Right, that was through the Democratic Party, had a conversation with those candidates, shared with them a legal opinion that was provided to the prosecutor's office.
Let's proceed with the business we're here for. Do we have nominations for the ballot for mayor? Mr. Kazur.
I'd like to nominate Jack Bradley.
Jack Bradley has been nominated. Is there a second?
Right.
Second, when you state your name so we know who's the second.
Ron Mancini.
Jack, you want to come up, please? And do we have any other nominations for mayor? I'm not hearing any. I'll accept a motion to, Tony?
Nominations be closed and unanimous ballot be cast for Jack Bradley.
Second? All in favor, aye? Aye. Congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, wrong speech. There's been a lot of talk recently about the A-team. Well, I want you to know that after meeting so many of the committee people and talking to you and getting your ideas and your thoughts, I have met the A-team of the city of Lorain. You are the A-team. You are the A-team. And I'm going to tell you something. When I run in November, prior to that, I am going to have each and every one of you take me to your neighborhoods and introduce me to your friends and your neighbors, because I want to get you involved. And after I'm elected mayor, I want to start a citizens committee. And I want you, the committee people, to be on that citizens committee so we can meet and get ideas and talk about individual neighborhoods and find out what the problems are in the city of Lorain from you so that it can be addressed by the administration. I think that's what is needed in this city, and I promise to do that. Now, I taught school in Lorain for 5 years, and I loved it. I was lucky. I was going to law school at night and teaching school during the day, and I taught at Emerson Elementary School, and I was a 4th grade teacher. Now, I've always, some of my teachers in high school, because I've lived in Lorain my whole life, born and raised in Lorain. All my homes have been in Lorain, and the great teachers that I had in the Lorain City Schools taught me some great things. One of the things they taught me was the poetry of Robert Frost. And Robert Frost, one of his great poems, he said, there were 2 words that diverged in the woods. And I took the road less traveled. And that made all the difference. And that's what sometimes you have to do. You have to take the road less traveled. Now, we've got the most beautiful high school in the city of Lorain. And yet, we got an F grade for our high school. Well, guess what? This mayor is going to go into the schools, is going to talk to the students, and going to bring some of you and some of the success stories that we've had in the city of Lorain to talk to these students, because we're going to get that school's rating up. We're going to get them. I was inspired by my teachers. I was inspired by where we lived. My friend Dan Green was recently elected into the Lorain Sports Hall of Fame. And he got up to give his speech. And he said, you know what?
no matter where we went and no matter who we played, we always knew that we were the best and we could beat anybody. And you know what? That's what we all have to think. We're from Lorain. We are the best. We can beat anybody. Now, I'm not asking for an A rating. I'd like to see at least a C. So I got a lot of stuff to say, but I'm just telling you, I had great parents. I got 3 wonderful women in my life. My wife Deborah, my daughter Jacqueline, and my granddaughter Roma. And believe me, they have been kicking my butt. Did you call this person? Did you talk to this person? Did you do this? You got to do this. So they're not going to let me rest for the next several months during this race, but we can all do it together. You know, it's an attribute of a good leader is number 1, it's not about me. It's about all of you. I remember hearing the story about Father Flanagan in Boys Town. And this young man is carrying his brother on his back, and Father Flanagan says to the boy, you know, that's a pretty heavy load you got there, son. And he says, he's not heavy, Father. He's my brother. Well, we're all brothers and sisters. Everybody in this town is my brother, my sister, and we've got to start thinking that way. And everybody gets an equal advantage in this town. So I thank you for this vote of confidence. It's really an honor. And I lost the last election I ran. I'm going to win this one.
131 days. 131 days until the November election. Now, after almost a month, the Democratic Party has a nominee, and I ask that we all unify behind our ticket and get our Democrats elected this November. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, this meeting is adjourned. They're here.